ways that a fresh officer may not exactly be initially equipped is don't consider it like a reduction of your own authority to defer to their experience in certain areas. So, and when you approach it, I mean, my suggestion would be approach it from the idea of like, these are all parts of your toolbox. And if you don't utilize them in the proper way or allow them, to manifest, then, as a handyman, you're going to fail. And so at the very least, one of the strongest lessons by your first couple of years is learning how to manage all of those, consider them all your assets. And if anything, you want to position them to do the best work. Allow them to have ownership of certain tasks that they're responsible and trained enough to do, while at the same time, understanding your position, your position of authority over them, and learning from that experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
I just have a question. Phil knows I always have a question. I have seen a number of student veteran panels. I think I've been here since the beginning. And it just seems to me that there's an improvement every year in that you are closer, you seem to have support for each other, camaraderie, and that kind of thing. And the early student vets, I think, were not in the panels, if I may be so bold as to express my opinion, were not very happy. They were not happy at the University of Michigan. They were missing things. They had, they felt really isolated. And I just want to say I'm really happy, maybe your self-selected panel, I don't know, that you are so positive about the experience. That makes me happy.
So I really want to say thank you, Phil Larson, actually. He's a big part of that. Thank you to Dr. Eric Fretz. Thank you for Tim, as one of the PA coordinators. As the president of the SVA, that's exactly, the SVA started, probably 9 years ago? 2008, yeah, so about 8 years ago. So, I mean, it was a really young thing, right? So I think that's the biggest thing, right? And this is exactly what I was, because the Marine Corps birthday is on November 10th, so that's this Thursday, and nobody brings anybody together, right? The institution really, unless we, talk to them, unless we have advocates, faculty advocates, administrative advocates, we're not going to have, any sort of support. So what the SVA has really done is, build that social support, so we have that network, so we have a place where veterans can come in and be veterans, and because in the end of the day, nobody's gonna care except for, the people who have gone through it, right? So the veterans, one of the first things that I did 2 years ago was, on the Marine Corps birthday, was buy a cake, because that's one of our biggest traditions. Yeah, and because I was like, what? If one of our most famous Marines, Chesty Puller, can find a cake in Korea, I think I can find one in Ann Arbor. So I think, so that was the impetus for that. And all of a sudden, I'm buying a cake this year, and this year's my last year, but I'm gonna pass it on, right? Because in the end of the day, nobody's gonna care. Nobody's gonna buy that cake for us. Nobody's gonna do that for us. We're gonna have to build our own network, and that's a big thing you'll see in a lot of universities nowadays, because the SVA has grown to a national organization. The only people that's really gonna care is if we make them care. So thank you for noticing.
Thank you.
To piggyback off of that, we always talk about the sizes on how large the SVA's kind of grown as well. Right, it started, what did we say, 2009? Yeah, 2008, 2009, and that was kind of at the height, or at one of the heights. And now just in general, it's kind of being aware of how many veterans are leaving the service, right? I mean, there's always been these veterans, and there've always been, but now we're getting a lot more Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans, simply because of the drawdown of the forces and things like that. So we're starting to see a lot of these, and that's one of those things that counts for these pure size numbers. And when we start going to school, 2009, 2008, 4 years ago, a lot of these soldiers that were in the service could have gone to college, right? The Army itself, or the military itself, became a lot more selective. So now that, the Army's drawing down and, these soldiers are getting out, they're like, okay, I need to go do something else. Let me go continue on with my life plan that I had prior to joining the service. My life plan, right? Whatever that means, right? Because it's like baseball, curveballs all over the place. And so I think that's the reason why you start seeing a lot of these veterans entering these academic institutions of higher education. It's just because, there's a lot more of them, and they're continuing on with their life plans, and the ones that, were in the service could have done this right out of high school if they wanted to.
Yeah. So when I got out in 2012, I actually was part of a reduction in force, right? So they were asking Marines, like, who wants to get out early, because my regiment was the last regiment to do a combat deployment, like a full deployment, right? So 5th Marines in 2011, we went in, just, hard charging, doing what we gotta do, and then in 2012, at the beginning of 2012, January 2012, President Barack Obama, did his State of the Union and was like, we're pulling out. So the entire mission changed. So instead of coming in, doing what the infantry and what the Marine Corps does, it all of a sudden changed to complete logistics. I was a Marine, but all of a sudden I was just kind of taking account of all the logistical nightmare that it is for that many people for 10, 15 years, of operations in the desert, and I was supposed to take out all those communications and bring them back to the United States. So the entire mission changed, and they were like, well, the Marines going from I think like 500,000 people down to 200,000. So it was a huge reduction in force, and that you saw that across all branches, right? And that it's not just in the Marine Corps, but as the war was drawing down, as Dylan was saying, I was living in between it. I was right in there for it, and then that's why I decided to get out, and I think that's why a lot of our peers decided to get out too, because they were starting to force people out as well too. One of the reasons that I joined was this guy named at the time Staff Sergeant Curry. He was the most hard-charging, motivated guy. He was in the first push to Fallujah. He was the best Marine, and I wanted to be like him. And we grew up in the same hometown, but at the same time, he couldn't pick up because and he just to kind of give, he had a Navy Marine Corps Chief Medal with a V for Valor, which is a huge thing, and he got kicked out because that's just the way the Marine Corps is sometimes. It's up and out. You can promote because he was we call them Field Marines versus Garrison Marines. So he didn't look so good on paper, but if you put him in operations, he will do anything for you. So it was just a changing military, because if you think about it as a big monolithic organization, that'll do that to you. So yeah, just to make a long story longer, as Dylan was saying, the force was reducing. So.
Other questions? Yes.
Hi. Thank you for sharing your stories and your experiences. I'm from the Center for Research on Learning and Teaching, and I work with a lot of faculty. We talk a lot about identities and the different identities that students have in the classroom. So my question for you is, what do you wish faculty, instructors, GSIs knew about veterans or veteran students?
Man.
I'll go real quick. With that. Like, some things that I guess I wish I could say, or I wish they would know, is like what we've been saying, is that otherness or like the alienness, that really is a part of the student veteran experience. It's not a happy part, but it really is. Like we do feel a part. We kind of need to find each other, and like you're saying, like we seem happier now. It's because I think because of the hard work that Tim, that Phil, that Fred's have been doing. Like they really have been trying to assemble this group where we can find some kind of way to release some people to relate to. And I encourage every new veteran that I meet to at least come check out a meeting or two and see if you can't plug into that. So that alienness is something that when you're talking to a student vet, maybe just keep that in your mind, is this person might not find a way to relate to everyone else that they're around so easily. And then also I think that we also feel a lot of us would feel a sense of regression if we were in for more than a couple of years, because I got out as an E5. It's a mid-level manager, and I'm back to being some guy in school writing an essay on time. You know what I mean? Like I had a group that I was responsible for. We prosecuted a mission, we provided intelligence to important people, and then now I'm just drinking and get my essays done on time. What I mean? So it's a huge regression. There's no more authority. There's no more there's much less responsibility. I'm still busy, but I got no sense of importance that I used to really, really, really have. And so I think a lot of student vets could feel a similar way to that. Our mission is kind of taken away from us now.
This will be my plug for Friday night's event. At Ross, we're doing the VetX, which is the Veterans Experience. It's a TED-style talk where we have 3 veterans share leadership stories. And I think ultimately what I think a lot of people, the veterans and the student population, like about that event is it's our chance to share our story. So it's awesome to have a veterans group because we can, we connect with each other, we can share jokes, we can laugh about things, but it's awesome to also share our experience with the population too. So I think for faculty and staff to know that, we've got some really good experiences that most of us would enjoy sharing with students or faculty.
Just to piggyback on what he was saying earlier, I think one of the largest challenges as far as becoming a vet, someone who's, you know, at least a little older, has had experiences in some capacity with, you know, responsibility and leadership. I think the format of this institution isn't necessarily designed in a way, for example, if you were going to an institution that was designed for people that were part-time or full-time employed and, you know, had a little bit more of the maturity that you associate with people that have been working for some time and have had to sort of juggle responsibilities. So I wouldn't necessarily, you know, fault the university for, you know, some of the experiences that we do have. I do think it's sort of a give and take. When you look at any other sort of minority group in this sort of a setting, it's always been necessary for both the group to speak out and make it clear and to erode those types, you know, stereotypes, and to basically present enough of a voice so that by the time the next generation of students comes in, or the next 2 or 3, you know, these assumptions are immediately eradicated. It's, you know, the idea of veteran students being sitting next to 18-year-olds fresh out of high school is normalized, you know, and some of these assumptions and stereotypes are just eroded, you know, with whether it's, you know, like groups of color, between the genders, orientation, and you see the same sorts of shifts. So I think it is a matter of give and take. The SVA is clearly vital to that. So I guess my only suggestion would be thinking in the guise of other minority groups, applying that to veterans, and then applying that same sort of sensitivity or just, you know, awareness of the fact that they're coming from a different space.
That's good. And I would piggyback on that I wish every faculty, GSA, and all the others that you listed would not default to PTSD when they're talking with people in the military in their class, because that's not the case, and that's not the standard. And the other thing, for people in the military coming from a very structured place, not to necessarily take it personal. If a veteran or military person gets livid because they changed the syllabus in class and not on Canvas, and just because coming out of that space of being very well structured, many times you know what you're going to do for the next 5 years. So to come into a 15-week semester and something shifts sometimes can be uncomfortable for sailors anyway. Booyah.
Yeah, so a couple things on that. Dr. Brett's chime in too. Because Dr. Brett is an educational psychologist. So has his PhD and teaches here at the university. And so chime in, but we've talked a lot about this too. I think to understand, like, on the very, very basic psychology level, when people get out of the military, the bottom half of the Maslow pyramid is chopped off, basically. So security, you know, sense of self, safety, food. I mean, we get chow in the military, so it's not the best chow unless you're in the Air Force. Which is pretty good, by the way, gentlemen and ladies. So it's not bad food. But really good salad bars, by the way. So they
French toast.
So they yeah, French toast was good too. So they so we got food. No matter what, like if I burned through my pay, and there were times I actually burned through my pay. I won't tell you how I burned through my pay, but I burned through my pay, right? And I got to the end, I'm still able to eat. Like I'm like, shoot, I gotta do the chow. Actually, I said worse, but chow hall. I gotta do chow hall food for the next week because I have no more money. Like, you know, and there's always a place to stay. And there was always, like, you know, there was always TV, or somebody had a TV or had cable, or so it's all this kind of basic stuff that we didn't have to pay for. And then when you get out, you know, I can remember feeling the indignity of, like, I have to pay for cable? I have to pay for electricity? Really? You know? And so a lot of that safety, security, and then compound that with what they said about camaraderie. So all your friends would surround you. All your friends, if I had trouble, I had a group of 6 to 8 guys that were just there. No matter what I did, no matter what stupid stuff I did, were either correcting me, saying, okay, no, turn this way, you gotta do this, or helping me. And so that all that stuff is kind of gone, and they're trying to rebuild, and that's and some of what SBA does is rebuild some of that security kind of platform, so we can get to the kind of the more kind of self-actualization, kind of knowledge-based part of the pyramid to learn. And a lot of our students go through that. So that's not, I mean, a lot of our freshmen actually go through that too, of just, chopping off like, oh my gosh, I'm not at home and I gotta fend for myself and da-da-da. So their bottom of their pyramid's kind of done. So there are similarities where we come in, it's just different kind of angles. The other thing, 2 things is that we're piloting a program we're going to roll out soon, which is a program called Cognito, which is a avatar-based training for faculty and staff. It's paid through the Consortium of Michigan Veteran Educators in Michigan, the state. And we're kind of test vetting that because we here at Michigan, we like to vet things before we roll it out. So we're vetting that program. We should have it done in the next month or so to kind of roll out for faculty and staff. It's already paid. And we also, we're developing, I know Fred and I have been talking about kind of developing kind of mini courses and stuff for faculty and staff of what we could teach them as well. It's kind of like, just getting them kind of the basics of, here are these folks. Next, sorry. Did you have something to add to that?
I think most people cover most of the things. I'd love to see how I'd love to talk to you. I used to do a bit of a veterans cultural competency thing for the faculty diversity seminar in the summers, and I'd really love to, if you've got something going on, if I could contribute that in any way, I'd love to do that because it's really something I feel really cute because I've graduated here 3 times, did 20 years in the military, now I'm back here as faculty. So I'm really into this whole taking care of the vets thing as Phil is too. I think pretty much, they cover most things. I think it's also important as faculty or staff to understand just how hierarchical the environment is. And so the professor is the colonel. You don't talk to him.